Welcome back to another video brought to you by RoboLabs and Floating Cotton Candy, and in this case, CaramelPopcornEquipment.com. In this video, we're going to be looking at some of the bigger equipment offered by RoboLabs, the fun food manufacturers of equipment in the popcorn, cotton candy, and caramel popcorn equipment. And this is probably the most impressive piece of equipment they sell, or in the most impressive line for business persons here in the United States and North America, and actually across the world. And that is the RoboSugar series of popcorn caramelizers. This is the RoboSugar 10 Auto, and I'm going to walk you through some of the basic features of it and then show you how easy it is to make caramel corn, and not just caramel corn, but lots of flavors of caramelized popcorns with this piece of equipment. Now this is the smaller, actually I should say it's the mid-sized piece of equipment. You can buy smaller caramelizers from the company. You can also buy much larger ones as well, but this is the one probably the most popular selling for small businesses. It is named the 10 because it is a 10-gallon kettle. So it makes 10 gallons at a time. This is probably the sweet spot for price versus value versus performance. So we've got a 10-gallon kettle, and we've got mostly stainless steel construction. It is called the RoboSugar because, like most everything that RoboLabs produces, it's an automated piece of equipment. One person can easily run it. In fact, one person could probably run 2 or 3 of them side by side if they were really trained and really proficient. But unlike the old-fashioned manual way of making caramel corn, which is pretty labor-intensive and pretty slow, the robotic version of this and the automated system makes caramel corns of all flavors very, very easy to produce. Now, what we have here is a machine that has a cooking kettle along with computerized control and auto dumping for popcorn, and then an auto cooling system with a tray, and I will move the camera for this video to different positions so you can see how this operates. But there's a cooling tray at the bottom so that when the popcorn is actually done, it is ejected into a separate bin that can be picked up and carried away, and it is already cooled and separated. So there's no manual process required to separate the corn and keep it from sticking, which is really the slow and laborious part of creating caramel popcorn of all flavors. The process itself of making the corn is really the same no matter what equipment you use. You add basic ingredients, which is mostly going to be sugar. You cook it to a high enough temperature while mixing it, and that is where the word caramelization comes from. The sugar reaches a caramelization point. You add your popcorn and stir it, and then any other flavors that you wish to add. You can use standard commercial mixes, or you can customize your own. And then once the corn is coated, you have to dump it, cool it, and keep it from sticking together until it is cool enough. And again, in an old-fashioned process, that is kind of laborious. As you're about to see, the RoboSugar 10 Auto makes that a breeze. You can essentially make perfect caramel corn your very first time and every time by using this equipment. So I'm going to start a batch and then stop the camera and pick it up and do some handheld so you can see how this system works and how the automated part of the process functions. I will then also give you some tips and tricks to make it easier so that you really can be perfect your first time through. And then I'll probably have some add-on videos. There's some tips and tricks and ways to get a little extra productivity and performance out of the machine that I won't include in the very first video, but I will make at least 1 and maybe 2 others on using this equipment, because it really is sort of the bread and butter of caramelization and owning or running a popcorn vending or a popcorn shop if you want to do gourmet flavors of all kinds. So with that, you're about to see how easy it is to buy a piece of equipment that you can plug into standard 220, available even in a residential setting because it is single phase, so it doesn't require 3-phase commercial power. You can literally run this out of your garage if you have 220 available, and make custom caramel corn creations using the RoboSugar equipment from RoboLabs. So getting started and making your first batch of caramel corn with the RoboSugar 10 is really just as simple as it sounds, aside from fixing power and plugging it into a 220. You're going to take the lid off the kettle, and we'll put this back on in just a minute. You're going to add your basic ingredients, which again could be custom ingredients or could just be pre-mixes. Add them to the kettle. Dry ingredients, which mostly sugar. Wet ingredients, mostly oil and water. And this is sort of anticlimactic in how simple it is. At this point, you turn it on, you put the lid back on, and you fill this bin, and I've already done this with, it is a 10-gallon kettle, but with caramels, the thick caramels, I tend to add about 9 to 9.5 gallons of popcorn, only because as a sticky mass, when it starts stirring, you'll get a little spillage over the top of the kettle. It sticks, and you'll see it when we get to that point. But with some of the stickier batches, I'll add a little bit less than the full 10 gallons just to keep it from spilling over the sidewall. I don't like sweeping, but you can use the full 10 gallons. I tend to go a little shy. And that's about it. What you're going to hear is that every few seconds it starts a stir cycle as it's heating up, and it will simply mix the batch. You leave the kettle on until you see a fair amount of steam start to escape. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod, and I'm going to show you exactly why that is. So here's the bird's eye view of this, and I'll try to do my best job to be a steady cam holder, which I am not. But the popcorn is in the bin ready to dump. The lid is on. You hear the stir cycle start. And I'll take the lid off and show you what it's doing. When you dump all your dry ingredients in there to begin, there's a lot more dry than there is wet. And until the sugar melts, it's very clumpy, very sticky. And you can see a lot of it will get stuck up on the paddle. If you leave the lid off, that won't all liquefy and stir and mix and boil down as properly as it should. So you want to leave the lid on initially until it's nice and hot and steamy in there and everything melts down into the bottom into a nice soup. So that's the reason you want to leave the lid on until you see some steam escape. That means everything in there is liquefied real well. And this is what it's going to do for, 15 or 20 minutes or so. As the temperature creeps up. Of course, how long depends on the ambient temperature in your room. I keep my room at around 68 degrees and very low humidity. So coming from a cold start takes a little bit longer. Obviously, your subsequent batches go much quicker because the machine's already warmed up. So we're going to put the lid back on, and I'm not going to make you watch the whole video as it goes through, but understand there's a display panel here which shows you where you are in terms of temperature. It displays in Celsius, and you can also hit your setting here to see what your target temperature is. My target for caramel is 175. You can set that up or down, and also note that there are 3 cycle buttons here. The second one, I can force the machine to go into the mixing mode and dump the popcorn at any time. So if the batch looks ready sooner, I don't have to wait for it to hit the target. And the final button, you can also force the machine to go into the cooling mode, dumping the popcorn onto the cooling escalator belt. And that's this mechanism here, and you'll see that in operation soon enough as well. The machine will do everything automatically, but you can manually override. And again, in one of my other videos, I'm going to show you where that comes in pretty handy. So we're going to mix the slurry into here until it's a nice hot gooey mess. The machine is going to automatically dump the popcorn in and then mix it for another 90 seconds. This kettle will automatically dump the popcorn onto this belt. It's a steel mesh. This will rotate for 5 minutes, cooling the popcorn. It will reverse its trajectory and dump the finished product into this bucket at the end. And that bucket is just sitting on a nice steel shelf, which can then be removed, and you've got finished cooled product that is ready to be bagged, binned, or put into serving containers of your choice. And it's worth noting that as soon as the kettle dumps to start the cooling process, you can then immediately add more material and start your next cook batch. You do not have to wait for the entire process to finish before starting your next cook time. So you can get 2 to 3 batches an hour, 10 gallons a piece out of this if you're looking for maximum efficiency. And that is obviously way better than you're going to achieve with a fully manual process. So I'll kill the video here and give it a little time, and then pop back in a few stages and show you some of the tips as to how this works along the way. Now at this point, when you get around 110 Celsius, on the gauge, you see that some steam is escaping from the lid. And at this point, we're probably in pretty good shape. Yeah, we're at 114, 15 Celsius. We're in pretty good shape. We can probably remove the lid, and most everything in there is probably boiled down. A lot of steam's going to escape once I lift this. And the steam's also going to make it hard to videotape. But you should see that that paddle looks pretty clean. Hopefully that's showing up without fogging my lens too much. And that's because everything in there is now boiled down into a nice liquid state. And we can leave the lid off for the rest of the cook cycle. So again, the only reason to leave the lid on is to make sure that everything boils down nice and nothing sticks to the sidewalls or to the paddle. Now, one thing I have to point out here I'm doing different for the video is right above me, you'll see there's a big vent. Not a grease vent like you'd use for grilling, but just a heat vent or just an air vent like you'd have just in your home kitchen. You don't want this steam accumulating in your room because it will make the final product a little sticky as all of this moisture is dropped into the room. So that vent I'm going to turn on as I turn the video back off. I don't have it on now because it would make too much noise and would disturb the video. So this needs to be running as all this steam is escaping. It's okay while the lid's on, but once you pull the lid off, that needs to capture that moisture. So I'm going to turn that on for now and come back when we're closer to the end of the cook. As our temperature gets closer to that end temperature of 175, that's where I'm cooking to. Typical range is 165 to 180, depending on your recipe. So we will be back. Now, as we get close to the final cook temperature of the batch, we're about 10 degrees Celsius away. Turned off my fan. I'll show you there's a lot less steam. You should be able to see that the walls are pretty clean. Everything's cooked down. We've got some nice bubbling going on there. At this point, one of the things you can do to make your life real easy is take some of the Gold Medal Free and Easy or a competitor product and spray the inside of the wall, but I don't use the spray bottle they provide. Instead, I use a little olive oil mister because what I want is the lightest possible coating of this just on the inside of the paddle and the mixer. Any olive oil spritzing bottle you have will work just fine. I go around the entire inside, and I do apologize if my Steadicam hand isn't going to be as steady as possible here. I just want to coat all of the steel on the inside, and I'll even hit the top of the paddle with just a nice light layer of this. So when the corn goes in and starts mixing up this caramel, everything sticks to the corn and not to the metal. And this makes a big difference, especially when you're making subsequent batches, so you don't get a whole lot of stuck that then makes the next mix cycle off. And I don't know if you can even see it on the camera here, but there's just a nice layer of oil, and I put it in about 10 degrees Celsius early so it has time to lightly drip all over everything. Light layer. Better you can mist. I've used a misto. I've used all kinds of different things, but I just want something that puts a fine layer, not a thick coating. When the corn actually dumps, then I'm going to use a really a thicker coating onto the corn itself. And I bought lots of spray bottles that I prefer, a little more controlled spray and a little denser. And then you're going to actually spray the corn itself as it mixes. And we'll show you that here in a minute. When we actually get to the dump temperature, you can see what the caramel looks like. It's getting a lot thicker, real bubbly, and we're about ready. And I'll come back as the dump happens. There goes the dump. I was a little slow in catching it. I apologize. And now you'll see the corn mixing. And that's what's going to happen for 90 seconds. All right, there goes the automatic dump. You won't be able to hear me too well over this. And now it's on this conveyor belt for 5 minutes. That's what cools and separates. It's just that simple. Well, and here we go. And what it's going to do is spit it out the end here into the cooling tray. And what you've got is 10 gallons of caramel corn cooked and ready to go. And that is how you make caramel corn the automatic way with the RoboLabs RoboSugar Auto 10. So let's reiterate or do a quick review. I know there's a lot of sloppy jump cuts there, and my handheld skills had a lot to be desired. All I had to do was add the wet and dry ingredients to the kettle, load the popcorn hopper with 9 to 10 gallons of popcorn, turn it on, and pretty much my job is done. If your recipe calls for adding additional ingredients as the temperature rises, as some chefs do, then you can certainly continue to do that. But otherwise, if you're just using premixes, for the most part, you add the ingredients and you're done until the machine's done. The only thing that is strongly recommended is that you do spray the inside of the kettle with something oil-based, typically free and easy from Gold Medal or a similar product, just to help reduce sticking. The cleaning of the system is also exceptionally simple. All I do is add about 2 liters of water into the kettle, hit start. When it gets to around 100 Celsius, you'll see a lot of steam develop. Let it steam for about 2 minutes, and then give it a wipe down. And I'm going to bring the camera over and show you various parts that you can clean and how simple that is to do. There's just nothing about this machine that isn't wonderful to work with. Alright, when it comes to cleaning, you're done with the process for the day, or you're changing flavors, you want to give it a quick cleaning. Again, I put 2 liters of water in here, let it run for a couple of minutes just to get up the temperature, boil for about 2 minutes, and by doing that, essentially the steam does all the cleaning for you, which is really handy. So there's really no scrubbing involved in this process. And if you look down the kettle, you can see everything pretty much just drips down to the bottom. I'll tilt the kettle here. I'll usually, have both hands free, and I actually tilt and pour it into the same thing that I poured the water from. But you see there's really no scrubbing ever involved here. I just give it a wipe out. I'll pour this water out. This is now a caramel flavored drink, but that's really about it. Just a wipe down of the sidewalls after doing this quick steam clean. And that kettle's clean. The bottom, all the scraps fall through to a pull-out tray. People always wonder about the actual cooling mechanism itself. This mesh really doesn't get dirty. I give it a wipe down every now and then, but because it's in constant motion, it stays amazingly clean. Wipe down the sidewalls, once a week or so with a wet rag. And that's about it. There's a little pull-out tray here. You might not be able to tell, but there's a stainless steel tray where the camera is focused, and I can pull that out from the bin side and rinse that off. But for the most part, the machine is exceptionally easy to maintain. About once a week, I will take these wing nuts off, and the drive mechanism has a big sprocket that drives this cooling tray. That will take a little bit of hot water, a little bit of Simple Green or other cleaner, because you will get some gummed up caramel corn and sugar stuck in there. So that's about a 15-minute cleaning project. I do it once a week. I believe that's what the manufacturer recommends. You probably could go longer, but I do like to keep my equipment clean. And that's the only thing that actually requires any time. Other than that, a little sweep up on the floor, of course. The machine is over 300 pounds, but comes with seriously heavy-duty casters, very easy to move around. And then the actual popcorn bucket itself can be removed and just rinsed out with water. So it's a joy to work with. Has been a hassle-free project to make both caramel corns, and I'll show you how you can make savory corns with it as well, 10 gallons at a time. So that is the RoboSugar 10. So again, to summarize with the RoboSugar 10, it's a one piece of equipment, completely automated. I want to reiterate, it runs on 220 volt power. However, it is a single phase, so you don't require expensive industrial power in order to run the machine. It runs on a typical 30 amp fuse, but it doesn't actually draw full 30 amps. It draws somewhere in the 20 to 25 range. So it's not a big consumer of electricity. You can literally run it. I have run it in my garage for testing purposes, though I'm obviously set up in a commercial facility here. It is a machine that is a one-person operator, and frankly, if you wanted to use it to its maximum, one person could probably run 2 or 3 of these simultaneously, meaning not only is it more efficient than a typical caramel corn kettle in terms of operator and how many batches they can produce in an hour, but one operator could definitely run 2 or 3 of these an hour if you were looking for maximum output. Beyond just the throughput and the productivity, the thing to think about from a business person's standpoint is you have a consistency. It's going to do it the same every time. A customer or a phone call is not going to keep you from missing a drop, missing a dump, missing a cooling process. So it's always going to be a perfect product. You can set your temperature and you can set your time intervals if you wanted to mix at a different time or cool for a different time. And that's all set through the user interface. Most people don't. It does a perfect job right out of the box. But if you have specific settings that you wish to use for your recipes that can be accommodated, it's going to do the same every time. So you're not going to have burnt batches, missed batches, sticky batches. The only real requirement some people don't always consider is that for caramel corn and popcorn in general, environmental controls are important. You know, you really do want to make sure your temperature is in that 70-degree or lower if possible, and keep your humidity down. It's a sticky process if you're trying to make caramel corn in 85 degrees and 75% relative humidity. Your product isn't going to be as good as it can be. Other than that, as long as you control the environment properly and have good ventilation, and that includes an overhead hood that when the steam is being released, you can at least turn it on for that period of time and get that moisture out of the room so it doesn't soak into your popcorn. The machine will take care of the rest. Use premixes off the shelf from many vendors, or use your own recipes. That's up to you. If you want higher production, then the RoboSugar 20 Auto is your choice. Any small business person has a retail location doing popcorn, desserts, treats, movie theaters, you know, again, bowling alleys, putt-putt. I've done a video on using a mini mixer for real small batch operation, and that will work for your savory corns, but this takes it to the next level. You can make just about any popcorn, and you know, again, I don't do it, but when you're done making a batch of caramels or flavors, you can start adding nuts and drizzles and all kinds of things. I mean, the sky's the limit once you've gotten a piece of equipment like this. But we will get to that in future videos. For now, I want to say thanks from Robo Jet Floss, Floating Cotton Candy, and CaramelPopcornEquipment.com. There will be more videos to come, so keep tuned to my channel. If you have questions, drop them in the comments or reach out to me directly. I'm here to assist. Also have a showroom in Michigan, about 45 minutes from 4 or 5 major metropolitan airports, so you can come by the showroom and actually run the equipment if you need to see how it works hands-on. That's what we're here for. So thanks again for watching the video, and hope to see you at the next one.